bring us up to speed if you can on Brock's situation. Obviously, this is the start of camp, and he's not here. Can he get here by tomorrow?
Well, I don't know that. Like, nobody wants Brock here more than I do. We're going to continue to talk to his agent, and I'll talk to him again today at some point and try to figure out, if something makes sense from his side and from our side. And as soon as, we can get to that point, you guys will be the first to know. But we're going to, continue to work at it, and hopefully it gets done. Travis can talk to this some more, but I think it's important that he's at camp. We got a lot of new players this year. The first 3 days of camp, I think, are very important. With Travis is with the system work that he's going to, do with the team, the power play. They practice a power play. So, I'm hoping that, but we'll see. I'll talk to Ben Hagenson later and see if, we can get somewhere.
You have said that you don't want to negotiate in the media, and I understand that part of it, but your message the last few times we've talked to you has been pretty consistent. I mean, are you making progress?
Well, I guess the answer to that is when we get a deal done, there's progress being made, right? Till you get a deal done, there's a lot of back and forth and a negotiation and trying to figure out, from their side what they want and if it makes sense from our side. So we'll continue to work at it, and we're hoping that we can get something figured out, though.
Travis, this is kind of not unique to Vancouver. You see Marner in Toronto and a couple guys in Winnipeg, Kachuk. As a former player, do you see where the players are coming from in these situations?
Well, it's not an easy question to answer, to be honest. It's, back when I played, it was a lot different. The money was a lot different. I don't think I've ever seen this many players not be in camp. But, from a coach's standpoint, I want our players to do well. I want them to make as much money as they can make. But I also want them in camp. And, we miss Brock. I want him here. Much like Jim said, I think training camp is really important to, your team. As individuals, it's also important. Missing the time is hard, obviously, depending on how much time it is. But it's hard to simulate training camp. It's hard to simulate practices, games, and it's unfortunate that this is where it's at.
Jim, you've talked about short and long-term deals with Brock, and you seem to have a lot of latitude there. Is there a frustration level here, Jim, because you seem to be pretty open on term? I know there's probably a number to negotiate. Is there a frustration level setting in here?
Before we start, and you guys know, I've said it before, we're going to keep that internal, the conversations that I have with the agents. Ben's trying hard from his side. We're going to continue to work at it. I'm not going to start talking in the media as to the specifics as to what he wants or what we're offering. And we've talked about a long-term deal. We've talked about a short-term deal. So we're just trying to find some common ground that makes sense for both of us, that we can get a deal done.
All these elite RFAs still unsigned. Do you think there's something else at play here from a general manager's perspective, just to push the envelope as long as possible, not come to camp, all these RFAs, and they're kind of in...
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. I think every team has their own internal cap structure that, they try to figure out and plan for and try to follow, and we're no different. We have some real good young players coming up here in the next couple years, and, we talk about it a lot, and so we're going to continue to work at it, and hopefully something can get done.
Travis, how does this affect camp if Brock's gone for even into the preseason now, in terms of how you kind of had an idea of how some of your lines might look, but I guess when somebody's not there, there's opportunity, I would imagine.
There is. To be honest, like I said earlier, we want him here, but he's not here. So camp goes on, and we'll adjust, we'll change the lines, and, that's just part of it.
Antoine Roussel says that he's been on skates for a little while. Can you just bring us up to speed from a team perspective on like, where he is? He's on the training camp roster, and also just any other health issues for anybody as you head to camp?
Not that I'm aware of anybody else. Antoine is going through his rehab, from the knee surgery, and he's back on the ice skating. I think he's still a couple months away from actually playing a game, but the good news is he's back on the ice skating, and he'll continue to rehab, and when he's ready to play, he'll be in the lineup, but it's still a long ways out.
You announced some restructuring that we knew was coming, but the announcement was yesterday. On the goaltending front, a bit of a surprise, I think, to some that Dan Cloutier has stepped away. What is the hierarchy now in your goaltending department?
Well, Dan, that was a personal decision he made. We kind of transitioned here this last year when Ian, came in and is the goaltending coach, and Curtis Sanford's going to work with our guys down in Utica. But that was a personal decision that Dan made, and I thought he was excellent for us. He did excellent work. We're going to miss him, but that was something that he decided on his own.
But no replacement at this point? Like you'll stay?
No, we're not going to replace that position.
Travis, we got a chance to talk to Louis for the first time yesterday, and he said over the summer he thought the comments he made had been blown out of proportion a little bit, and that you and him had sat down and had a conversation and were on the same page. Would you agree with that, and how would you characterize the conversations you've had with Louis here?
Yeah, I mean, I heard what Louis said yesterday, and him feeling that way, I can understand it. I don't think Louis is a player or a person that's going to go out of his way to make a rift between a player and a coach, and it did cause a big story over here. Obviously, I heard about it a lot, commented on it a little, probably 3 weeks ago, and I'm not going to comment on, or you guys know me well enough, I'm not going to sit and say what Louis and I talked about, but we have talked, and he seems to be in a good frame of mind, and he's ready to go into camp.
Just to follow up, you've never been afraid to talk about what more you need to see from a player, and whether it be a young player like Jake or Goldie. Last year, you seemed to go out of your way, almost double down on your praise for Louis at various times in the season. So in that context, were you surprised that those comments came out, right?
I think double down is a little bit of a strong statement. I did mention a few times that Louis does, he's a smart player, he's a good player. When I'm doing that, it's because people want 30, 40 goals out of him, and he knows that he hasn't reached that yet, and obviously I've got respect for all the players in our room, and I'm going to point out some things that they do well. And I don't think I went over and beyond praise for Louis or praise for anyone on our team if it wasn't deserved, or criticism for players. I know they work hard. I know they want to do well. He wants to do well too. And, we didn't see eye to eye on some things, and that's all right. That's part of coaching. I can tell you what, every other team in the league has players that don't agree with certain things that the coach does. That's part of pro sport. And, it's a new year, it's a new season. We'll see where it goes.
I want to ask you about, both of you, about just the captaincy, and if you've got a timeline in mind, and if you're feeling that something's going to get done before the regular season starts in that regard.
Well, it's the same as last year. I thought, after Hank retired, been a captain a long time, I didn't think we were ready to have a captain, especially when such a prominent one left. I like the leadership group in our room, I will say that, especially with the new players that we've added. But being a captain for an NHL team it's a big honor, it's a big decision. It's nothing that you need to rush into, and you need to make sure that you make the right decision, and we don't have to decide today. I think that's the exciting thing about training camp, not just from a leadership and captaincy, but from player standpoint. You can sit here, and the media does, and we do the same thing. How are we going to be? How's this going to be? And yet you got to get on the ice and see how your young players have developed, see how the players coming in fit with your team. And that kind of fits the mold, too, with captaincy. I want to see how everything looks on the ice, in the locker room, around the guys, and we'll make a decision.
As an organization, though, you're a little more ready to do that if someone emerges than maybe you were a year ago?
Well, I think the longer you go, the more, we're going to name a captain eventually. So we're a year down the road, and we're definitely closer to naming one than we would have been last year, for sure.
Travis, you talked a lot last year about how hard it is to score in the NHL. Obviously, you've added some players to help with that. Are there enough goals in this lineup now?
I think we're better equipped to score more goals now. But you're right. It's to score in the NHL, it's not just on the forwards. It's not just on the D. There's a lot that goes into it. We've got to score more if we want to improve, but we got to defend better as well. And they're both connected. If you do a better job in your own zone, you're going to have a lot more time in the other zone. So there's been a lot of talk about our goals, but I also feel that our goals against have to be a lot better as well.
Travis, Jake is coming off a year where he had career year for goals, points. I think he was first in hits, takeaways, things of that nature. How does a 15-goal guy get to 20 in the sense that at some points, I mean, Jake skates well, he hits hard. Sometimes he's a bit of a independent contractor out there. What do you need to see in Jake to take his game
Improvement.
to the next level? Where?
Well, I think he's a young guy. All our young guys need to improve for us to take another step. And part of that improvement starts over the summer. Working on your shot, working on your skating, working on your conditioning, coming into camp in great shape. Consistency. That's, I find with young players, consistency is a big word. And, coming into camp ready to go and putting the work in the summer is part of making sure that you're consistent in the summer or in the season.
There's a lot of things you can control with a player in terms of what you want them to do. You have a situation with Sven, who's had all the concussions, and there's really nothing you can say as a coach or a GM. What have your medical people told you? What has Sven told you about how he's feeling and going?
Yeah,
'Cause I know he had some
he feels
problems
good. He's
near the
cleared to
end.
go, and I'm anxious to see where he's at as far as how he looks on the ice and the work that he's put into.
There's nothing you can really say as a coach. He has to experience it himself, right? To get to those areas he has to get to.
For
without
sure.
worrying about it.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
head.
Barch is a smart guy. He knows, he understands the game, and I think he'd be the first to admit that when he came back at the end of the season, that's a tough task to not be skating for a while and then come in and play NHL hockey games. So, I thought it was good that he got to play at the end of the year, and again, we'll see where he's at with the rest of his game when he gets into camp. There's a lot of things that we talk about that you're asking that, I'm excited to see where guys are at as well.
Jim, in terms of the changes to the hockey operations department on the scouting side with a variety of people taking on new responsibilities and new faces, can you walk us through the thought process that went into some of those changes that were announced yesterday? And yeah.
Well, I'd probably need about a half an hour to go through in more depth, and I can talk to you guys about that during camp. We restructured our group to make it more efficient. I think in some cases we got more coverage than in specific areas that we think are important. So, we're always looking for ways to do our jobs better, to be better, to draft better, to develop better, and we've talked about making some changes, and we made them, and I'm really excited about the new people we've hired, and because we want to be the best that we can be in drafting and developing and doing all those things. So I'm really happy with the changes we made. But as we have more time, I can sit down with you and we can go specifically through each guy and why we made the decision.
Sounds good. And with Travis, you mentioned goals against needing to be better. Is your club better equipped to defend better this season?
I think our team's better than it was last year. We talked about it at the end of the season that, really from day one that I've been here, we want to improve every year. And part of improving is the players you add in the off season. I think Jim's done a great job with adding players to our group, and I think we'll be better equipped in a lot of areas.
Jim, you've mentioned a few times that you'd like a top 9 forward group, kind of breaking away from the top 6, bottom 6 split. Do you believe you have the personnel now to have that depth, to have 3 lines of scoring?
Well, it would be a lot easier if Brock was signed, I think. But, that's something that Travis talks a lot about, is having, 3 lines that contribute in the scoring. And I think, the additions we made this summer, we have more depth. Like for us, I think last year we didn't get to the net. We weren't big and strong enough to get to the net. And signing Furland and trading for JT Miller, these are bigger bodied guys that are going to get to the net. Like when we, talked to our analytics people and we watched video, like we need to score more dirty goals this year, like deflections, rebound goals, and by adding some guys with some size and strength that can get to the net. And the other part to that, and I think Travis touched on it earlier, is defensemen that can shoot the puck and get pucks through to the net. So, we need to score more goals, but I think, we've added some players that are going to get to the net and some defensemen that can get pucks through for them to score goals. So, that was kind of our plan.
And Travis, you've got a lot more wingers at your disposal that are more offensively skilled, more offensively capable. But your third and fourth line centers right now in Sutter and Beagle are definitely more defensively inclined. Do you think you have the centers to have a third line scoring line?
Well, I think you said I want 3 lines that can score. I want 4 or 5. But it doesn't happen in the NHL a lot. But I think when we've talked about this is we want contributions throughout our lineup. There's been talk about this top 6, top 9. I think it gets a little bit overblown. I think we have guys that are capable. I think, you talk about Sutter, and, he's scored in the past. He's a guy that can score. He hasn't always been surrounded with offensive players as well. And he's been in heavy matchups. And when I say score, like people, 10 to 15 goals is not a bad number out of a, and even when I said it last year, like scoring 10 goals, 15 goals in this league, it's easier said than done. And when you're in a heavy matchup role, it's also a lot harder to score. And we could probably get more production out of guys if they weren't always in that role. And now that goes on to Bo and Petey. Are they capable to play in a matchup role, which changes the dynamic of what the other lines face as well? So there's a lot that goes into that. I think personnel and players are all part of it. How you play, like Jim said, how your defensemen activate in the rush, how they shoot, how they get pucks to the net, also affects how guys score. And it's not just the first and second line players. It's the third and fourth line guys that maybe go to the net sometimes a little bit harder, and there's more rebounds for them to score goals. So I think Sutter's capable of scoring more than he has. And I hope he has a good season. I think he's excited to go. He feels healthy, and he wants to help any way he can. And that's the great thing about Suts. He just wants to win and contribute. So, but again, these are things that play themselves out as training camp goes on, gets going, and you see how they trained in the summer. And you can tell right away sometimes just by testing where guys are at. And we put a real emphasis on conditioning and coming into camp ready to go, not working your way into camp. Those days are over. So, a lot of these answers we'll know more as we go.
Will one of those potential answers be someone like Adam Gaudette? Like, what does he have to show in this training camp and preseason to prove he belongs on this roster?
He's one of many, to be honest, that, I like Adam Gaudette. I say it a lot in here. Like, everyone thinks I like him. I think he's going to be a good player for us, and we need to make sure that we put him in a position to succeed. But also, what has he done over the summer to make the jump from, a player that played, I thought he had a decent rookie year, found his way, but we want more out of Adam Gaudette, and he wants more out of himself, but we'll see in the next couple of weeks where Adam Gaudette is at.
At times, Travis, over the last couple of years, you've had to juggle your lines
Right.
quite a lot, whether it be because of injuries or lack of depth, as opposed to what you have coming into this season.
Mm-hmm.
How excited are you for the opportunity to potentially find some more solidified lines and defensive pairings?
I am. I would love to just have set lines from day one, right through the whole season. That would be a coach's dream. And that usually means you've won a lot of hockey games. So, I think with the players we've added, we'll be able to find a little bit more stable of a lineup. I think Bo's played with so many wingers over the years, and a lot of that's been out of necessity. Some of it's been out of injury. And, I think from a coach's standpoint, I would love to have a little more set lines or even pairs, and you can slip guys in and out a little bit. But we also have, I think we'll have options that if a guy's not playing well, there'll be guys vying to get up into certain spots on the team as well, which is always, internal competition is a great thing. You want that.
I'm sure that applies to the power play as well, which will have some pretty high expectations of it going into the year.
Well, higher, for sure. I mean, our power play wasn't great last year. And I've talked about this a few times. The year before we were 10th, and last year we slipped, but, Hank and Danny are Hall of Fame power play guys. But also our second unit that year that we finished 10th, I think they scored 22 goals that no one ever talked about. And I think last year, numbers are off, but 7 to 10 maybe on the second unit. And that's a huge drop-off. If you added 10 goals there, the percentage of our power play would have been a lot higher. And I think we're gonna have competition to play in the power play this year.
Jim, just looking back at the prospects camp this past week, and I know it's, only just wrapped up, but, any early returns, reflections on not having prospects games the way you guys structured this year?
Well, I think it was good for, our younger players to do, the 3 or 4 days of skills work going into training camp. They got on the ice, the coaches got to work with them, they did some battle drills. I really like the group. Like, I think, we have a lot of potential NHL players in that group. We're going to have a lot of good young players in Utica this year that are going to be developing. And I think, maybe since the first time I've been here, I think when we call up players, when we have injuries, we're going to be calling up, these young players that are going to be NHL players for us in the future going forward. So, I was pretty excited about watching them. I'm excited to see how they do this week in regular camp. But the depth on our defense of our young group. Ole Ulevi looked good skating out there last week, and I was happy to see that. And he feels pretty good so far. So we'll see what these guys are at this week.
Carol, just before we get to your question, we're going to wrap up after you speak, and then Ian's got a question or two for the group here.
I just wanted to ask quickly if everybody made it through prospect camp okay and healthy, and is Roussel the only player who's on IR going into camp?
I believe so, yes.
Follow up, Travis, to your comment about wingers. Bo got to play with Brock before P arrived, and then he lost his winger and seemed to play with everyone on the team at some point.
Right.
Did he ever express to you disappointment or concern that his partners were changing so often? And do you think with steady wingers that you've brought in, he might have an even higher offensive ceiling?
First of all, I think Bo hasn't reached his potential. I think he's still going to be, I think there's still room to grow in his game, which, I think should give more numbers. It's not the end-all, be-all. Obviously, when you play with better players or more offensive-minded players, you have a better chance of scoring more points. And as far as the level of frustration, Bo's not like that. I've had lots of conversation about his line mates. The good thing about Bo is he understands. It wasn't complaining when we talked about it. It was sometimes I opened the door just to let him. I might have brought it up as far as frustration levels and understanding that, from a coach's standpoint, I get that he's playing with a lot of different players, and it was never him coming in to complain about it. It would have been me opening up the door to talk about it and make sure that he understands why. And you know, that's why Bo Horvat is who he is. He's not a guy that's going to come in and complain. He gets it. He gets the team concept, and I would love to have set, you know, a little bit more of a set look for him. But again, these are answers that'll play itself out as we go, really. And you know, winning and losing does a lot to influence your lines as well as a coach.